some questions from the floor to address our panel later on. So please do send in your questions through YouTube comments, Facebook, LinkedIn, and if you're joining us on Zoom right now, feel free to send it through our chat. Of course, none of this would have been made possible if it wasn't for the foresight of Gunjan Soni, Chief Executive Officer at ZALORA Group. Having realized the need for a true North Star to serve as a guide in this ever-evolving consumer market, Trender, ZALORA's proprietary analytics solution, was born. Spearheaded by Ettore Strapazon, who we'll also be talking to today, Trender comes in at a time when data-driven analysis and execution plays an important role in shaping a thriving retail environment. Now, with that in mind, I'd like to invite Gunjan Soni to present to us key highlights and insights from this inaugural industry report.
Thank you, Amy. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for this discussion. I assume that most of you have already received or would shortly receive the Trender report for your reading pleasure. And before I get started, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you, Amy, for being a wonderful editor for the report. I know from the team that you used your editorial scissors very wisely and have been pushing for insights as we went through this process. And also thank you to all the industry partners and contributors. We are, of course, joined by both Warren and Samuel today here already in the panel, but also others who contributed to make this a far more richer report. You know, I won't take away the fun of your reading pleasure later, because we actually attempted to make this report represent both data, but also our exciting world of fashion and lifestyle. And therefore, we've actually opted for a magazine style report. So today, what I wanted to do was more share a few insights and maybe a preview into what might help you get the best out of this report. And then we'll obviously get into the panel discussion, which I'm sure is going to be a lot richer. So as we delve into it, the report actually covers three key aspects. It starts off looking at the Southeast Asian consumer. Of course, a very well documented set of demographic, but very less understood. And I think, you know, Amy, you used very kind words, but I don't think myself or any CEO in my shoes needed to have a lot of foresight to come up with this, because as I spoke to literally every peer CEO in the brand's landscape, the most urgent need and the felt need was for data. Especially as COVID hit us, you know, in very unprecedented ways and shook up the retail ecosystem with very disturbing news around layoffs and even bankruptcies, which continue till date. And therefore, to me, this was, you know, a way for us to contribute back, use the rich data mines that we have and the fantastic work by the Trender team to see if we could actually be helpful to the industry at large. So thank you to all the supporting partners once again as well. We then looked at the COVID in particular and said, you know, what are the key shifts that are happening on the consumer trends? And I think that's, you know, some of it is very, very counterintuitive. So I hope, you know, you will find it valuable as well. And last but not the least, you know, the most debated is what's going to happen in 2021. And I think this was the most fun part, because data alone cannot guide us on this. And therefore, this is where the industry perspectives were most helpful. And what we tried to do was really distill out the few key trends that we believe will shape the next year in particular. So getting into the key highlights, if you look at Southeast Asia, I'm super happy to say as a woman that the future is female. You know, a whopping 80% of ZALORA shoppers are women, which is very representative of the larger base in Southeast Asia. Women contribute close to 80% of all household purchases. They outshop men by 20% and spend 40% more time on online retailers. And therefore, no surprise that they represent the large chunk of the ZALORA shoppers as well. What's also interesting is the behavior patterns that the shoppers exhibit. And while there is a lot of diversity, we could call out three key emerging trends. One is that the shoppers are very occasion driven. And this also represents, I think the rich cultural diversity, which leads to very occasion specific purchases, whether it's Raya, whether it's Ramadan, and many other occasions like Chinese New Year, which are very unique to our region. There is a very large base, especially online, of mass affluent, and needless to say, tech savvy consumers, because we have one of the youngest populations also globally. Moving on, again, this is using ZALORA data, but one of the big myths in the industry has been that most of the shoppers, especially the savvy shoppers online, are from the big towns and the central cities. And as you can see, that myth has been very well broken by the facts. And we see that whether it's the outskirts or actually even the very remote areas, they're already contributing a large and actually growing share, especially during COVID. They represent a growing share of sales online, especially as we see it at ZALORA. No surprise for anyone here, I'm sure. The region is definitely the social capital of the world. Philippines leads the way, followed by Indonesia and Malaysia, on not just time spent, but also time spent on social channels, which then has quite big ramifications on the way people are consuming content, and we'll talk about it shortly. You will hopefully find this very helpful. We've actually shared with you our proprietary shopper profiles. This draws on both the purchase data, but also the behavior data around browsing, not just on ZALORA, but also using the industry data on these behaviors and some very in-depth consumer interviews and surveys. Some very, very interesting profiles emerge. Maybe I'll point out just one, which is the modest modernist. Good one for a tongue twister there. They represent close to 15% of the total base of Southeast Asian shoppers, and represent almost an equal share of ZALORA shoppers as well. What's unique about them is that they have a very strong moral and ethical compass. But at the same time, they've found the rich marriage between culture and religion, but also following some of the latest trends. And this is giving birth to very interesting trends, especially also in the world of sports, where we are seeing a very different kind of modest sportswear consumption rising, and brands waking up to this reality and collaborating to actually make it happen on the ground. There are lots of other rich insights here, so I think this is a highly recommended section that I would urge for you to go through. Lots of shift in trends as a result of COVID. Again, most talked about at the moment is the increased interest in online shopping. And I think, no better than Samuel representing Google here to share some of his views on this.
Thanks, Gunjan, and good afternoon, everyone. What we have seen during the early days of the pandemic is that there has been a rapid growth in terms of searches for online shopping, everything related with online shopping, including delivery coverage, which used to be one of the main sort of pain points and the points of interest for consumers. And that, in a way, I think is to be expected. But what I found most interesting is that that change has been a lasting change, and even lockdowns have eased and people have kind of returned to go out, that fundamental interest in e-commerce has sustained, and still up to today, it's kind of been on a step change trajectory where it's just not coming back to where it was before. And so it looks like a promising shift where all these sort of habits will continue also in the future.
Thank you, Samuel. I think moving on, there's been a lot of shift in the categories of purchases, and we're obviously using more the online representation here. I think very clear is the shift in the apparel purchase patterns. Very big shift away from dresses to being presentable on video, which can mean very different things for different people, but certainly has meant an increase in purchases which are visible above the top, so tops, and there's been some thesis on how denims are being replaced only by shorts, and high heels have gone away. But equally a shift towards keeping fit. And I think this is being represented globally and not just in the region. We also see beauty emerging as a very strong category. Traditionally, an offline game, the online penetration has been increasing dramatically, and we've seen triple-digit growth on this category since the start of the COVID lockdowns, and even in as recent as the 11/11 campaign, it was a whopping 300% growth. So definitely we see strong trends towards it, especially personal grooming when it comes to skincare and hair care. Not as much makeup, which is not surprising as well. Moving towards the next category, I think this is probably one of the more counterintuitive insights coming out of the Trender report and data, where we've actually seen luxury sustain its growth patterns and even grow stronger, versus actually some of the initial predictions that this category would suffer the most. And we've seen a huge shift towards online shopping for this category, which earlier was definitely on the smaller side. Kids, once again, has always been known to be a retail goldmine, at least offline, is now doing the same job for the online players as well. And then we see the emergence of home as a category, which is emerging stronger. Again, as people are spending more and more time at home, this is something which is definitely driving the shift in behavior. So what does this all mean? We are speaking so much about the shift towards online. Does this mean that it's the end of the offline era in the shopping malls? Our considered view is no, not quite yet, and not for quite some time to come. However, it's definitely going to need a lot of innovation, and I'm thankful again to one of our contributors, Ayala Malls, who are among the largest players in Philippines, to share their experience of how they've been innovating and pivoting to reinvent what malls can be doing to drive this new consumer innovation. But definitely we see more a marriage between offline and online happening rather than the death of the shopping malls. So what can we expect in the months to come? Again, we see a lot of rich trends happening, prioritizing a few for your consumption here. First and foremost, content. And we talked about Southeast Asia being the social capital. But this combined with a lot of new consumers' willingness to try out online has meant there is a need and desire for understanding and getting more information. Now, this new age of consumer is no longer consuming information in the traditional ways. They want to consume it as video content, as more entertaining content. And therefore, we do see an even stronger shift towards influencer and key opinion leader-led marketing. A lot of live sessions, and this is already becoming an emergent trend in the region, including entertainment as part of your online shopping agenda with a lot of gamification. Localized content execution seems to be the key to being able to get it right and personalize for the consumer. At ZALORA, just to take one example, we've also launched what is called the Get the Look inspiration feature, whereby you can actually browse through influencer marked posts, which are then linked to our catalog. So you could actually not just browse inspiring looks, but you can actually shop them. You could equally search using your own pictures or any picture that inspires you on the street, and find comparable looks. And I think more and more, the marriage between content and commerce is going to be a key theme for 2021 in the way we see it. The next big trend, and something that I'm personally very passionate about, is sustainability. It's very clear, and while there have been a lot of debates about whether Southeast Asia is ready for it, I think COVID in some ways has also been a wake-up call. And it's the consumers as well as the brands which are becoming a lot more aware and conscious of the impact that we are having on our environment. Some very pointed facts today show that the percentage of customers who are now willing to pay at least a 5% or even higher premium for sustainable products is already reaching between 50 to 60% levels for apparel. And this number is even higher for beauty. So I think that's definitely a trend to watch out for. Again, taking a ZALORA example, and extremely thankful to all our brand partners who are collaborating with us to bring more transparency into the ecosystem. We've launched the ZALORA Earth Edit. What this does is enables our users to have the transparency to filter and browse and see products on the basis of the impact they've had using various criteria around sustainability. And this definitely means a more empowering shopping experience for them. There's obviously also the great circular fashion revolution, which is also the other emerging trend that we see happening. So lots of action expected in this space. Then coming on to payments, there's been one of the most dramatic action, both pre-COVID, but accelerated by COVID in this space. And once again, I would love to invite Warren from Adyen to maybe share some of his perspectives and insights here directly.
Hey, thank you, Gunjan. And hi, everyone. This is Warren from Adyen. Cashless and contactless are two big trends that we're seeing across the region. And it's also important to remember that this trend isn't started because of the pandemic, but the adoption of cashless really started years before. And you see contactless credit cards, you see Google Pay, Apple Pay, and the mobile payments, as well as QR code wallets that have really emerged in the last few years. And you see when you walk around Singapore, you're starting to see cafes that are saying they don't accept cash anymore, or consumers that are simply just not taking their wallets now and just relying on getting around with mobile phones and mobile payments. And we're starting to see this as a big trend. In fact, in Adyen's recent global research of shoppers, we're seeing that 72% of shoppers in Singapore are actually wanting to adopt cashless payments, mostly because of hygiene concerns, most recently because of the pandemic. And just to give you a sense of how big that is, the global average is 54%. So in Singapore, the consumers are very much along the adoption curve of cashless payments. Now, of course, when you take a look at Southeast Asia, that adoption curve really is varied across the different countries. But when you go to, whether you go to Manila or KL or Jakarta, it's no longer about just either you're carded or not carded, which meant you pay with a card or cash. And this was very prevalent, say 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But as you can see, there's so many different payment methods now. And the story is the same everywhere. There's QR code wallets, there's mobile wallets, there's so many options now. Increasingly, we see this trend that cash is really, it'll take time, but definitely starting to go away.
Thank you, Warren. Moving on, I think we talked about the emergence of the convergence between offline and online world, and I think technology is here to stay and bridge the gap. We're already seeing some very interesting solutions coming up when it comes to augmented reality, but also more immersive solutions, whether it's virtual trial rooms, and enabling a more closer shopping experience for users. And this is definitely something big that we are focused on at ZALORA, and definitely both our users and brand partners can expect some new innovations coming, at least from our stables in 2021 on this topic. Another trend, and I don't think any discussion on retail is complete without supply chain. And this is definitely also one area which I think has been quite dramatically being shaped, especially around COVID. As we spoke to several of the brand partners, one of the big emerging needs is how to manage the 10x, 20x increased volumes that they are seeing for online, and has been unprecedented. How to manage the broken supply chain of what's happening in the offline world, what's happening in the design solutions, and then when to bring it to market. And I think to answer all of this conundrum, there's obviously a lot of thinking going into solutions around single stock pools. And definitely at ZALORA also, we are stepping up to the occasion and using one of our key strength pillars of fulfillment to offer the solution to our brand partners as well, which would enable them to use our warehousing facilities and our delivery solutions to be able to ship anywhere in Southeast Asia. Doesn't matter whether it is only for ZALORA or whether it's for their own online platform or any other online platform they want to serve. And I think this is an area which is also going to see some very rich innovations from multiple players, and it's hotting up quite a bit. Interestingly, we are in that part of the world and in that quarter of the year when we cannot but talk about the mega shopping festivals. It starts off with 9/9 and goes on, and we are all awaiting 12/12. But I think the big question here is, are these events just about discounting and bargain hunting? And I think what we see very clearly is that no, these are not just about that. I think these events have actually become very big adoption events for driving penetration of either new categories or of online itself. And this trend, again, is very much accentuated, like Samuel has said, in the post-COVID era. Both in Q2, if memory serves me right, we saw one of the largest new customer acquisition waves. And these customers were also becoming a larger share of our total revenues. And even till date, in the most recent 11/11 campaign, new customer acquisition was almost 8x of the daily average. So definitely these events are becoming great ways for both companies, brands to drive adoption, whether it's, like I said, new categories or new ways of shopping. I think without much ado, let me hand over back to Amy. But leaving on a more positive note as well, I think it's becoming very, very clear that what some might call the fourth industrial revolution, I think is no longer just a mere idea. It's becoming a reality. And the good news is that we are seeing players shape and embrace this new reality. And definitely our consumers, as always, are ahead of the curve and leading the way for us, whether it's through data or from their behavior patterns, to tell us what is it that we must do. So hope once again you enjoy reading this report, and back to you, Amy, for our continued discussion.
Thank you, Gunjan, for taking us through the key insights from the report. It's giving me a bit of a flashback moment when I was writing it. But in any ordinary circumstances, we'd all be together in physical an environment where we'd all be going through the report together. But here we are today, which brings me to our Q&A session. Thank God for technology that brings us all together despite us being hundreds of miles apart. Now, speaking of, let me introduce to you once again to our panelists from Singapore. Samuel Saini, Sector Lead of Apps and E-commerce at Google Southeast Asia. Warren Hayashi, President of ASEAN Pacific, Asia Pacific, sorry. Ettore Strapazan, Leader for Trender, ZALORA Group, and of course, Gunjan Soni as Chief Executive Officer of ZALORA Group. Thank you once again to everyone for joining us here today. Now, I'm just going to open up the questions to all of you for now. One of the biggest challenges in Southeast Asia discussed in the report is the region's diverse ethnicities, religions, and languages. Now, how, in all of your opinions, how do you think businesses can overcome this?
I can start maybe. I actually don't see this as a challenge, but it's an opportunity. And actually, I think it's one of the reasons why I enjoy being in Southeast Asia and doing business in Southeast Asia, is really that, rich diversity between different countries, even within these countries. And that sort of opens up opportunities for businesses, opportunities to serve different customers. For example, I truly admire how ZALORA has been able to really create offering for these consumer segments, like Gunjan was presenting before about the modern, modest, and I think that just opens opportunity for businesses, because e-commerce does not need to be all sort of the same for every customer. Of course, there are some challenges in dealing with this complexity. When it comes to, how do you select, what do you suggest, as product offering to your customers? How do you do digital marketing, to reach different users with different messages? But luckily enough, there is technology for that. There is machine learning, AI, both on platform for the e-commerce players, and when they interact with users on media like Google or YouTube. So I think there are the technology solutions nowadays to cope with that complexity.
Great.
And I agree. It's a big opportunity in Southeast Asia, and of course, this isn't something that's new. Southeast Asia has always been fragmented, language, culture, let alone all the demographic differences that Gunjan mentioned earlier. Now, I agree. Technology is going to be the way to connect the dots and learn more about the consumers, and in ZALORA's case, the shoppers. Now, how do you take technology to learn more about the shoppers and the consumers? I think that's really the way to connect the dots. At IDEA, we talk about the concept of omni-channel unified commerce because it's so critical for businesses to learn more about where your shoppers are going. It's no longer about shoppers going exclusively online or exclusively in store. It's a mix and match now. And how do you connect the dots through technology and for us through payments?
Great. Of course, because of the pandemic, consumers have become far more active online than ever before. And we see this really happening even at the start of the pandemic. It's kind of forced people to come in online and kind of find respite in technology. Now, what does this digital acceleration mean for Perspective and incumbent players at large in the years to come? And I invite everyone to also join in on this conversation.
Yeah, it means digitization it has been accelerated, especially over the last 12 months. Sometimes not by choice anymore, but it means exactly the same thing whether you're an incumbent player or someone that's coming into the playing field. It's almost a must. You have to invest in this digitization and think about the engagement and the adoption of mobile. It creates so many opportunities, right? It's no longer about being able to search through the mobile. It's no longer just about using the app. Just think about where commerce is going. Look at where social is going. It's no longer about influencers. In fact, commerce is increasingly going to be embedded. Look at the experiences that you see on Instagram and TikTok. These are all new elements of commerce. And of course, it's not just about engaging through the mobile. The physical device itself is also a payment device now. You can actually walk around without a credit card or cash anymore and just rely entirely on mobile payments in many cities across Asia. So investing in where the consumers are going is a must now.
Great. And it's really just, not necessary, it really, everyone has to jump in on this as well. Gunjan and Ettore, do you have also any insights to add to that?
Yeah, sure, Amy. I think one of the things that's probably less talked about because it's a shift towards digital is actually the physical components that go behind even digital delivery. And I think that's one area where we see a lot of players struggling. And this is really about being able to fulfill on that promise. It's very, I wouldn't say it's very easy, but it's still possible, and it's being driven by natural adoption curve changes for people and traffic to come to the online platforms. But where we see a lot of players struggling, and I think it's going to be very important to address, is how well are you then able to fulfill that demand, and are you able to match the supply with what's in demand, because those patterns, as we just saw, are changing quite fast. And second, to be able to align your supply chain to actually be able to deliver, especially again, because the region not only has the diversity of cultures, but is also very diverse, and very remote locations need to be served. And that's where some of these new demand centers are actually emerging. So I think it's going to require, to be successful, to be able to master not just being able to handle the traffic and the payments, but also being able to physically deliver the goods on time and maintain that promise to the consumers.
Great. Ettore, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
Yeah, I think so. The direction of what's happening on the demand side, I think it's very clear. Like, we are seeing a huge increase in digital engagement. We're seeing over 30% increase in the time spent on the phone, 3 to 4 hours. We see the numbers we presented, the Gunjan presented before, right? 109% increase in Singapore in online shopping in Q2 this year is crazy numbers. So I think the next level consideration, and this seems to that will stay, right? It seems to be a sticky demand that there will probably 9 out of 10 of the new customers says they probably will continue to shop online even after the pandemic. So the real question will be, what is going to be the shape of this demand at a later stage? So we see now some very specific demand pattern on some specific categories. I'm thinking within the lifestyle segment. I'm thinking about sports attire, right? We saw 100 to 200% year-on-year growth in some of the sports subcategories, depending on the market. I'm thinking about, of course, the stay-at-home attire, right? At the same time, we see a decrease, minus 30% year-on-year on searches like dresses and even more so on workwear. This will change, so that this extra demand that is now generated, and it's going to stay at a later stage, will eventually focus into new categories and change of shape. So I think this is going to be the challenge of the post-pandemic online shopping.
Great, thank you, Ettore. Also in the report, we're always talking about omni-channel, and something that I've realized is that to be omnipresent is to also blur the lines between offline and online realms. Do all of you at some point, do you think one will outweigh the other? And if so, how can key players choose their sites wisely?
I think it's important to remember that it's not omni-channel or unified commerce is not about making a choice of either or even trying to balance. It's really trying to be additive. So think about omni-channel not as a way to just throw a wide fishing net so that you capture every consumer and their preferences, but really around taking that experience up to the next level. Think about cross-channel experiences. Of course, you see, buying online and pick up in store and return in store, which almost has become de facto in many parts of the world, and you're starting to see that more across Southeast Asia. But there's more to that. There's experiences like endless aisle, when you walk into a store and when the size or the color is not there of the particular item you want, there's iPads in the store where you can pick an order from the warehouse and that's shipped to your home. That's an interesting cross-channel experience. And you'll see more and more of these experiences come out. And the second part is that the store isn't going to go away. Like Gunjan mentioned, people want to go back to the store. 87% of consumers in Singapore actually immediately want to go back to the store after the circuit breaker, right? So the role of the store isn't going to change. The nature of the store isn't going to change, or the role may change. And being able to design the experience that consumers want, I think that's so much more important than having a choice of, well, do I invest in store or do I invest in online? I think it's really trying to marry the two channels together to come up with the best experience.
Great, thank you, Warren. Now, Samuel, the fact that there is so much to experience online has led to a change in the way consumers engage with businesses digitally. Now, as a consumer myself, I find that I've spent way too many hours browsing through content on my phone, even through Facebook or Instagram, that rather than spending it on my laptop. What does it say about the way Southeast Asians interact with each other digitally?
Well, look, in my view, there have been concerns on digital well-being. Again, when people spend 3, 4, 5 hours a day on mobile. However, I like to think about it the optimistic way, which is many people are actually doing useful things. And this is one of the aspects of the technology which has been sort of helpful through the crisis, with people kind of coming online with a purpose. So, for example, learning new skills on watching YouTube videos. For example, during the lockdowns, I've learned all new cooking recipes. I've done, of course, a lot of exercise and just being helpful to different people. Like in Google, we have an app called Google Classroom, which has been incredibly helpful, to connect students and teachers through the pandemic. And I think in general, there is a realization that tech as a sector has been helpful through the crisis. I think when I think of ZALORA at some point, I really admire how you were able to offer the essentials, sort of offering relatively quickly, to really sort of leverage your fulfilling capabilities, and again, being helpful because that's what people needed at that point. So if I compare to 1 year ago, where most of the narrative about tech companies was of wasting time online, whereas now it's about actually a realization that all these tech solutions, e-commerce solutions, online video, online entertainment are actually really helpful to millions of Southeast Asians.
Great, thank you, Samuel. Well, another surprising point discovered in the report is how consumers are still opting to choose cash on delivery over e-payment. Warren, you and I, we've had this conversation before, and it's a very interesting point considering how there is some sense of low consumer confidence when it comes to e-payment sometimes, but it's cash on delivery is still thriving in Southeast Asia.
Cash on delivery has been around for a long, long time. And it was really started on the early days of e-commerce where digital payments were even less sophisticated than it is today, much, much more so. And it was there to solve two problems. The first one is trust. But what we're seeing now with consumers is that, of course, one, they're a lot more savvier, and they're also choosing to engage with brands with particular brands that are giving them the best experience. So it's not just about, of course, the quality and the trust in the service and the goods, but it's also around the overall experience. We're seeing that in our study that consumer shoppers across the region are actually prioritizing experience and the checkout experience over pricing, or even sometimes over the quality of the goods. And when you have, as retailers, build that trust and loyalty engagement with consumers, you're solving a big part of the trust issue. The second thing that cash on delivery was there for was to solve the access. So in the early days of e-commerce, in many parts of the world, you either had cash or you had credit cards. And that was the two choices you had to make your payment. But as we discussed earlier, there's so many more choices now around digital payments. And consumers all across the region, whether they're using a credit card or a debit card or a QR code payment or even bank transfers, there's just so many choices now. And I think it's, the consumers can really adopt the payment method that they're most comfortable with. And I think through all this digitization and the desire to go contactless for safety purposes during this time, cashless is going to become a real thing. So of course it takes time, but I think cash on delivery, I think, will go away as retailers, of course, build more and more engagement and trust with their consumers and shoppers, and while the digital payment adoption grows at the same time.
Great, thank you, Warren. I guess this also means that we all have to rethink and recalibrate our strategies online. Now, what exactly does it take to stay ahead of the curve and set yourselves ahead from the sea of digital noise? And Samuel, I think you're the man to go to for this insight.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen, of course, businesses coming online more than ever before, and many of those businesses doing digital marketing online to reach their consumers. I would say the first insight is almost obvious, but it's worth sort of noting that because people are spending more time online, and because there are more people who are transacting online, and we've seen this 40 million new users coming online in Southeast Asia just in 2020 as a result of the pandemic, businesses need to reach them where they are. And so we imagine that like an increase in digital marketing and online marketing will continue in the year to come. Because we mentioned before about all the complexity of having different languages, different consumer segments, our recommendation for businesses is to trust the sort of power of AI and machine learning as they reach their consumers. And really, I mean, when you look at Google, we have solutions that are fully AI powered, where advertisers sort of upload their objectives. What are you trying to do? Their budgets, their assets, and then they let machine learning and AI do the magic and sort of connecting those with those consumers. One thing I noticed though is that for marketeers, especially those who are a bit more experienced and a long career in marketing, maybe they feel like they lose control and they kind of is the death of creativity. And actually, I feel it's almost the opposite. Some of the most creative projects, I would say, in digital marketing, I've seen them this year, again, because people were trying to compensate for the pandemic and try to be creative and try to work on innovative solutions. And so I found a lot of creativity coupled with machine learning and sometimes enabled by it, which I found really, really interesting.
Great. Speaking of the pandemic, we've seen quite a few interesting trends that have emerged out of the Google data bank. One of them being sportswear, beauty, home decor, taking the lead in the retail space. Samuel, how does this reflect the current post-pandemic consumer behavior?
Look, I think I can really speak to that even on a personal basis. Since the beginning of the pandemic, I decided to dedicate more time to exercise and running. And I think I bought basically all of my gears on ZALORA. And yeah, I don't know, it must have been more than 10 pair of shoes that I consumed through the pandemic. And so what I noticed is that before many of those purchases I would make when I was in store, like shopping in shopping malls on a Saturday or Sunday, and now, even though I have access, like many million of people, to going back to stores, I just don't see the value. So, for example, if it's a pair of shoes or a brand that I already know and trust, or a size that I already know fits me, I just go online and order it, and maybe I choose different colors or different models. I do believe that, as you mentioned in the report, I don't think that's the end of retail stores and malls. I think retail stores still play a very important role in product discovery, in experience, but also they need to up their game. If the retail store is just a sort of boring, standardized sort of display of products with limited in the terms of experience and advice, then I think people will eventually move all those purchases towards online.
Yes, absolutely. Now, as though it might seem as if the apparel category is heading towards a downward spiral, as Gunjan had previously outlined as well, our findings suggest that luxury products are actually keeping the segment buoyant. Gunjan and Samuel, perhaps you could both shed some light onto this as well.
Yeah, I think it's it's definitely counterintuitive, because at the start of the pandemic, there was a lot of speculation and debate about the segment. Also, the segment tends to be traditionally very offline driven, and I think that that's been the case for a variety of reasons. couple of factors that we believe are contributing to the resilience. I think one is perhaps the real, maybe unfortunate fact that even during this pandemic, it's actually the more affluent parts of consumers and population who've had better resilience. You know, their jobs have not been threatened because it's been easier for them to move to more digital modes of continuing to do work. That combined with the fact that a lot of the avenues for entertainment and travel have gone away actually means that they have slightly more disposable income. And end of the day, one of the key use cases for luxury and lifestyle is also just feeling good. And I think, people are therefore opting for some of these purchases to still bring that cheer and surprise. But what's also interesting is that people are investing in what would be called the classics because they do believe these will carry long-term value. And therefore we see that the segment is showing a lot more resilience than was believed to be the case. And I think it's obviously habits are being forced to be broken, and therefore the online penetration is increasing. The good news we believe is that once this happens, and this is true for beauty and kids as well, traditionally stronger offline purchase categories, that once this habit changes, people are more open to the newer world of online. But on the other hand, a word of caution as well. I don't think this COVID means the disappearance of the traditional apparel and the dress category. I think what's going to happen is much like the malls, the use cases as they come back, when people start going back more to work, start going out more for travel, vacations, entertainment, people were buying this stuff for particular use cases. As those use cases come back, we do believe some of these demand patterns will come back as well. But a lot of the new categories will show stickiness. So I think that's really what is going to be the exciting part of looking at the recovery process from the pandemic, and then seeing, how do we invest behind the right category mix to serve the consumers well.
Tamerley, would you have anything to add to that as well?
Oh, absolutely, I agree. And one thing worth noting is that we are still in the middle of it. It's far from being resolved. There are still restrictions of movements in countries. International travel is prohibitively complex. And so we see all sort of second order and third order effects that are very difficult to predict. For example, here in Singapore, people cannot travel internationally, but restaurants are fully booked until February. And you have these, unexpected consequences on different sectors, on different consumer preferences. And so I feel like it's very difficult to have a crystal ball. What's important is to have the right data. So I think initiatives like ZALORA Trender, our platform on Google Trends, sort of give a sense of what's trending, what's rising, what's declining, and then businesses just need to be very very agile. I don't think this is a situation where there is a lot of planning that can help, and sort of what are we going to do in 9 months from now, but how can we roll out a new solution in 1 month from now? I think that's much more important.
Great, thank you, Tamerley. Just going back to the luxury sector as well, and I find it very interesting because I can see that there's a sense of longevity behind it. In the report, I also spoke to Stephanie Crespin, founder of Style Tribute, and she mentioned in the report how this longevity of luxury fashion items have actually contributed to the success of the resale market. Gunjan and Ettore, how do you think this will pan out in the long run as well?
Would you like to take that?
Yeah. So no, I think this category in particular will the resale luxury market will get a lot of benefits, in particular from this situation. If you think about it, it's the perfect mix of factors, no? And what we analyzed in the report as well, that there is on one side a customer that is more attracted to value. There is on the other side also a customer that is attracted to quality, and at the same time we have a customer that is more aware of sustainability issue. So these three converge together into the resale luxury market, and it's probably across customer that is a bit of the tree that will perfectly fit himself into buying from this resale website. And if you look on the supply side as well, we see more and more business model related to this industry, right? And everything probably started as with the first marketplace as a C2C commerce back with probably eBay, right? When everyone is a buyer and reseller of second-hand items, but at the same time now we see a lot of B2C models that sells to customer that ensure the quality and also the authenticity of the items, which is one of the main risks related to this market. No, you talk about style tributes. There is also Vestiaire Collectif that do that, and there are also other business models that rent high-end fashion items like Style Theory in Singapore. So I think it's a very active and very growing market in that sense, and I believe this pandemic will definitely help this growth.
Thank you. Gunjan, would you like to also add to that?
No, I think Ettore covered the key trends. I think from our experience as well, we resonate around the power of it. I'll probably only underscore the supply challenge of authentic products. And I think the more investment happens in overcoming that challenge by brands or by partners that we work with, from a demand perspective, we actually see people's willingness to adopt. And actually, it will only accelerate post-COVID as some of the fears around, a pre-loved product and the possible risk of, of any contamination goes away. But the underlying trends are very, very strong and favorable. The key is going to be to find more and more authentic supply, like Ettore said, and that's what we are learning, even as we did more consumer surveys to understand this pattern.
Yes, and you've also got the Earth edit as well, which is very, very fabulous. I've already seen the curation of it.
Thank you.
Now, to go on to Ettore, and we're going to be talking about how all this data has pretty much contributed to our understanding of the current landscape. Now, how did ZALORA use data to pivot through COVID-19? And how did Trender enable ZALORA to even help brands during this difficult period?
I think at ZALORA we're really a data-driven company, right? And really every department has access to in-depth analysis on a daily basis. So it's no surprise that I think we managed to react very quickly and to tackle the COVID-19 situation from different sides. I think in a nutshell, it very much depends on being able to promptly recognize shifts in demand and the new demands trend. That's very much the core of it, and of course react to it. Now I'll just mention a few examples. Also Samuele was mentioning before, but we immediately spotted the growing demand for lifestyle products in late Q1, I believe, and already at the end of Q2 we managed to launch a completely new category in record time of 2-3 months. The same happened with luxury and premium category, but also sports category that we grew 100+% year over year. And the same with the Earth 80 that you just mentioned. Sustainable collection is a new demand trend that we immediately try to size. I think with Trender, we're going one step further in the sense that all the raw information is already elaborated, is already digested, and the final result is presented there, right? So one can immediately spot on Trender shifts in demand, analyze changes in customer purchasing behavior, demographics, everything down to the more granular level of information. And one more thing that was done in Trender that I think also because it's a very customizable solution in a way. So already in Q3, we were able to add a full module focus only on COVID-19 effects on sales, right? So where we basically were comparing the demand side by market at a very granular level and offered this kind of insights to our brand partner. So yeah, this was the core of it.
Great, thank you, Ettore. Before I end our Q&A session and open up to the floor, I'd like to ask everyone, our panelists here, what has been the most striking takeaway from this report to each one of you? Perhaps we can start with Warren.
You know, what's striking is just how much technology is become forefront across the end-to-end, and end-to-end from a shopper perspective as well as a retailer's perspective. So think about, you know, on the very front of the value chain, search, right, or search and marketing, all the way towards the end in payments. How technology is such a forefront now. I think the digitization we've seen across the industry and really globally in the last 12 months is something that's really something amazing to see. It's probably unprecedented, and it's really because, you know, we've had to change and we've had to adopt. And I think just the resilience that, you know, where technology has come in has been really amazing to see.
Great, Samuel, perhaps you'd like to go after as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I was very pleased to see that 80% of consumers on shoppers on ZALORA are female, which I think it's really encouraging. And from an insight on the pandemic, I think the one on luxury goods growing so fast and kind of made me feel that maybe, you know, as the end of the year approaches, maybe I should also at some point pamper myself with some luxury purchases, because I've been more on the essentials side for the past couple of months.
Great, thank you. Good, John. And Ettore, would you like to add either one as well?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's lots of insights, and I totally echo the points that Warren and Samuel made as well. Maybe to build on it, what also struck me was the need for agility in organizations. And the starting step for that is really the willingness to use data and to actually use insights more than data. And then, you know, the strength of the leadership to make decisions fast, because unless you decide fast enough, you know, you cannot drive change at the pace the consumer behavior is changing. So I think, you know, that's just one learning that strikes you, because there's so many trends which have been almost lying unsurfaced for years now. And then in a short span of 6 to 8 months, you know, you've seen unprecedented acceleration on them. And I think that's going to demand very different levels of agility, decision-making, and data-led decision-making from all of us in the industry.
Ettore, would you like to add? Thank you.
Yeah, from my side, I particularly liked how it was emphasized when the report look into multi-channel, omni-channel strategies, how it is emphasized that actually a solution could realize in the you know, in blurring the line between online and offline. And I think it's really important, you know, and we mentioned few examples in the report. We mentioned what Ayala did with their app. We mentioned what IKEA is successfully doing with their virtual reality. Other brands, like I think about the Sephora app, that they also have a virtual reality for makeup, and many other examples are there in the industry. But I think it is true. We are not talking to two different persons, one online and one offline. It's the same customer that is both online and offline at the same time. So we should really merge the two and create a unique customer journey that is able, with new technology, to you know, cross these barriers and follow the customer during the whole journey. And if you think about like QR codes, you know, this is a very old technology that came back to life recently thanks to this lockdowns and social distancing. The QR code is the perfect bridge from online to offline, right? It's from offline actually to online. So I think there is more to come, and I definitely think that that's the right direction. I like the fact that that was highlighted in the report.
Great, thank you, Ettore. We're actually done with our Q&A, but I will open the floor to send us some questions, and I believe we've already received quite a few actually, but I think we only have time for 2 or 3. Now, I believe this question would probably be best for both Gunjan and Warren. And the question goes, what is ZALORA's effort to strengthen the use of e-wallet or My Store Credit to consumers? For now, only Malaysians like to use e-wallet payments.
I can speak a bit about ZALORA, and then maybe Warren, you can add the more industry perspective. We are definitely working to make as many payment methods as possible to be available to our consumers, because I think as a platform, we believe in choice. So not just in Malaysia, we are seeing adoption curves shift quite dramatically in Indonesia. Singapore, like Warren was mentioning earlier, I think is definitely leading the game on digital payments overall. Hong Kong is also super strong on some of these trends. Philippines has traditionally been behind on the adoption, but we are again seeing a lot of new innovation happening in that country as well. So overall, from ZALORA's side, I think this year, I may get the number wrong, but we would have added probably close to 9 or 10 new payment methods across our various geographies to just make that choice available. And one of the newer trends we're also seeing is people's desire to use some of the pay later and installment options in addition to e-wallets. And that's again something that we are adopting well at ZALORA, and it goes well with some of the higher value luxury purchase categories being more resilient as well.
I think the biggest challenge that merchants face today is finding which payment methods to offer, because the landscape changes so much, and in the context of the complexities of and the fragmentations of Southeast Asia, it's not just about payment methods in one country, but it's also around 6 countries, potentially up to 10, depending on the geographies that you're present in. And I think this is where really taking a step back and saying, what is the payment method that fits your brand experience, fits your checkout experience, because it's not a one size fits all. That's really important to really understand. And of course, consumers have choices now, and they may say that they have a preferred payment method, but in certain cases, that payment method might not work very well with certain checkout experiences. So I think retailers really need to take a look at one, of course, working with payments partners that can offer multiple payment methods, but also really trying to draw the balance of what's really needed. And I think that's probably one of the biggest dilemmas that retailers face when we talk about payment methods.
Great, thank you, Gunjan and Warren. Second question, how will physical retail space be with digital gaining increasing traction? What will be the key trends of a successful offline retailer who has gone online as well? Samuele, perhaps you'd also like to go into this.
Well, if I can only make one suggestion to an offline business that has gone online, is to take care of their online assets as much as they've taken care of their offline assets in their entire existence. And what I mean with that is that we have beautiful retail stores that have really put a lot of attention to optimize the in-store experience, the advice, the checkout, the flow in the store. But then still many times we see businesses coming online and having either websites or mobile websites that take a long time to load, that are not updated with information, that have maybe apps that are either very heavy to download and they're not just user friendly. And so I would say that to be successful online is not just enough to have an online asset and people will flock to it, especially with so much offer coming online. But really, take care and build capabilities, and that also comes even before really investing in online marketing to drive traffic and to drive user adoption, because those users, if the experience is not good, they may not they may not come back. So that would be my main advice to online businesses that have come online, and there have been millions of those, or hundreds of thousands of those during the pandemic.
Thank you, Samuele. I think we've only got a few more minutes left, and I can only fit one more question in. So one last one. What do you think of color cosmetic industry growth will be in 2021? This is to rephrase the overall cosmetic and beauty industry, and perhaps Gunjan, you might want to go through this.
You know, what I would say is that you need to stay tuned in to Trender because I think the patterns are changing so dramatically. It will depend a lot on the path of recovery and the levels of restrictions. We've definitely seen color cosmetics, you know, light dresses be one of the areas that's been suffering. On the other hand, skincare, hair care, and others increasing a lot more. I think a full year is a very long time frame in the way we now see things. So I think definitely what can be empowering is to see the shift in the trends sooner rather than later. And I think that's really what a tool like Trender would be able to bring to the participants in the industry to be able to spot it early enough. I don't think I have any crystal ball gazing ability to say whether it's going to grow or how much it's going to grow. I think data will show the way.
Great, thank you, Gunjan. I think that's it for our Q&A discussion. But before I end that, I just want to once again reiterate like how important data is when it comes to navigating, especially through these unprecedented times. And with that in mind, I'd like to also invite Ettore to take us through Trender and give us a bit of an insight to what is actually happening here with this proprietary analytic solution for ZALORA.
Yes, thank you. So I'll try and share my screen now. Can you guys see? Yeah, yes, okay, cool. So thank you. I'm gonna take this last few minutes to talk about Trender, and I will try to give you a more precise idea what is Trender and why we build it. So many of the analyses that are in this report and the data presented this afternoon have been extrapolated from Trender, but what is Trender then? Well, in a sentence, Trender is our ZALORA data analytics solution, a platform that provides high-level business intelligence and insights, which are based on the browsing and transactional data of the highly qualified and fashion-focused audiences that we have collected in 6 Southeast Asia markets over the past 10 years. So we built this, and here you can see a snapshot of how Trender looks like. But we basically built this data solution with a clear goal in mind, that is to help our brand partners to use data to replace guesswork, right? It emerged clearly today, and particularly in times characterized by high volatility and uncertainty like the ones we're living in, that having access to reliable and updated information is key to success. And so, being able to monitor and understand the changes in the market will eventually minimize the risk of the future business decisions. So for this reason, we built Trender. We built this data solution, and we're currently offering it under 3 different products that you can see here. So depending mainly on the data needs of the brands, there we have a Trender Basics, a Flexi version, and a Pro version. So the main difference is that Trender Basics is a monthly report at market category level, which provides highlight on trending products and assortment and customer behavior, while Trender Flexi and Pro are both dashboard that can be accessed at any times and contains up to 13 months of rolling data, which are updated weekly, daily, and even they're basically in real time for some of the dashboards. The main difference is that Flexi allow users to select only specific modules and have a limited time access only, while Pro is a full package. We provide a 360 degrees view of the entire data available on Trender. So it is important to highlight that Trender can actually be used to drive business strategy across different departments. And here we have some example, right? So it can be used for trading, and departments, e-commerce, departments like e-commerce or also sales and pricing can access daily and live sales data and see all the information about the traffic, for instance, or analyze conversion and campaigns results, but can be also used by marketing. And we have a full module on customer demographics, geosegmentation, customer purchasing behavior, which is really helpful. But we also have a traffic module, so we do give full visibility to customer, to the full customer journey on ZALORA, from impressions down to conversions and cart abandonment. But also can be used by merchandising and designing. And we have full information about the products, and the main use here is, of course, to do assortment planning and analyze size distributions or color distributions or returns rate and returns reasons. Another thing to highlight, and is very important, is that Trender has been built to be easy to use. So we have created this product that basically provide access to 13 different dashboards of data analysis and required almost no training for new users, right? And this is very important because I think having access to a lot of information but not being able to read it is basically the same as having access to no information, right? So this is an important part that we like to highlight, and we make it this way because we believe that data information to be useful needs to be easy to read and understand. And for the reason, we have a team of UX and BI expert that works on the user interface. And we added information like, as you can see here, information pop-ups in every table, in every graphs. We added slice and dice functions, but also filtering, drill down capabilities, clickable views. So it's really interactive and easy to use. So in this way, we provide access to the full content of Trender. And here you see every single dashboard that is basically split by topic of analysis to give a consistent and unified views by topic. So you see here we have customer, product, traffic insights, basket analysis, stock, literally every single dimension and every single vertical that you can use to analyze your data. And most important, we do update quite frequently the content of Trender to make it always up to date and to have always relevant information inside. So the new release in Q4 has been particularly focused on trading, since Q4 is, of course, the month of big sales event, and it's when brands more need the daily information, sales information, stock information on a daily, hourly level. So that's why we released these new modules, and soon we'll have also a campaigns module, but there are many more on the way. So I think since Q2, there are over 900 brands that already subscribed to Trender, and I mean, we are here, and for any question, or if you want to schedule a demo session, you can just get in touch with us and at this email. Thanks.
Thank you, Ettore. That was very insightful. Unfortunately, we have to give it a wrap to our session. We're done. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to Warren. Thank you to Samuele. Thank you to Ettore, and of course, Gunjan. It's been a tremendous time just discussing all this with you. And of course, I would like to once again thank our partners, Google, Adyen, Ayala Malls, Abercrombie & Fitch, Shiseido Group, and Style Tribute for providing valuable input into our case studies and this report. Until next year, I am Amy Yasmin, editor of this year's Trender 2020 Southeast Asia Industry Report, and wishing you to stay safe, stay healthy, and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.